battle-hardened alien freezes after hearing terrifying human war stories. The famous Warriors Tavern on Nexus Prime wasn't just any drinking establishment. No, this was where legends came to drown their victories in Xeraxian ale, and occasionally their defeats in something stronger. I, Crack Svor of the Sentinel clans, had earned my place at the bar's most coveted spot, right next to the holoscreen showing the latest gladiatorial matches from the Omega Sector. My crystalline exoskeleton, scarred from countless battles, caught the purple-tinted lights of the bar, creating a mesmerizing pattern that newer warrior often stared at. Each mark told a story, and tonight I was in the mood to share them. Not that anyone needed to ask, my reputation preceded me. The warrior who single-handedly defended the Arxian Gate during the Hive Wars? That's me. The one who outmaneuvered the notorious space pirates of the Crimson Nebula? Also me. Around me, the usual crowd filled the tavern with their chatter and boasts. A group of Taurians, their massive horned heads barely clearing the doorway, lumbered toward their usual table. Their thick hides bore the marks of recent plasma burns fresh from another border skirmish, no doubt. In the corner, a pair of synthetics played their endless game of strategic conquest, their metallic fingers moving pieces across the holographic board with calculated precision. Another round of stellar burst, Cracks for the bartender, Old Zax 9, his forearms moving in perfect coordination, already had the glowing blue liquid ready. His primary eyes focused on me while his secondary pair kept watch over the rest of the establishment. Smart old bot, you don't survive running a warrior's bar without keeping all your sensors active. Pour it, Zax, I rumbled, my mandibles clicking in anticipation. Make it a double. Something tells me tonight's going to be interesting. I hadn't survived 3 centuries of combat without developing a sixth sense for trouble. Or entertainment. Sometimes they were the same thing. The tavern's entrance hissed open again, bringing with it a gust of recycled station air and the heavy footsteps of new arrivals. Several conversations paused, a ripple of silence spreading through the crowd. Even the synthetics looked up from their game. I didn't turn around immediately, that would show too much interest. Instead, I watched their reflection in the polished bar surface, my rear sensors tingling with curiosity. Well, Zax 9 muttered, all 4 of his eyes now fixed on the entrance. We don't get many of their kind in here. Now that got my attention. I turned, my battle-worn armor creaking slightly, to see what could possibly make old Zax break his carefully cultivated appearance of indifference. And there, standing in the doorway like they owned the place, were 3 figures that would change everything I thought I knew about warfare. 3 humans strode into our sacred warrior space, and I nearly choked on my stellar burst. Not out of fear, mind you, more from the sheer audacity. The famous Warriors Tavern had standards, after all. Yet here they were, these soft-skinned creatures barely tall enough to reach a Taurian's shoulder. The first one, a female they called Amanda Stone, moved with the fluid grace of a plasma dancer. Her dark hair was cropped short, military style, and a jagged scar ran from her left temple to her jaw. The battle vest she wore bore markings I didn't recognize, not surprising, given how little attention I paid to human military achievements. Looks like we found the right place, boys, she said, her voice carrying across the now quieter tavern. The casualness in her tone made my mandibles twitch with irritation. Behind her, a mountain of a human male, though still tiny compared to most of us, surveyed the room with eyes that reminded me of targeting systems. Jackson Hayes, I would later learn, stood with his hands loose at his sides, but something about his stance screamed ready for action. His arms bore strange markings, tattoos, humans called them, depicting what looked like ancient battle scenes. The third human, Marcus Turner, was the most unremarkable of the lot. Average height, average build, nothing special except for those eyes. They were the eyes of someone who had seen the void between stars and lived to tell about it. Not that I was impressed. Much. 3 Terran whiskey Stone called out to Zax 9, who hesitated for a microsecond before moving to serve them. The humans settled at the bar, 2 seats down from my position. Several warriors shifted away, creating a bubble of empty space around them. Heard this was where the real warriors hang out, Hayes said to no one in particular, his voice a low rumble that might have been intimidating to another human. I couldn't help myself. I let out a laugh, the sound echoing off my exoskeleton. Real warriors? This establishment has hosted veterans of the Hive Wars, survivors of the Quantum Crusades, and champions of 1,000 battles across space and time. What could soft skins like you possibly know about real warfare? The three humans exchanged glances. Not nervous ones, like I expected. No, these looks carried something else. Amusement? The sheer presumption made my combat reflexes tingle. Soft skins. Stone turned toward me, taking a slow sip of her whiskey. Interesting choice of words from someone who's never faced a human in actual combat. The tavern grew quieter. Even the synthetics game pieces stopped moving. I have fought beings that would make your species curl up and beg for mercy, I declared, my pride getting the better of my usual restraint. Creatures that could tear through battleship hulls with their bare appendages. Warriors who? Yeah, Turner interrupted, speaking for the first time. His voice was soft, almost gentle, which somehow made it worse. We have all got war stories. Question is, you want to hear some real ones? Several nearby warriors chittered nervously. They knew my reputation, knew what happened to those who dared interrupt me. But before I could respond appropriately, Stone leaned forward, her scarred face catching the purple light. Tell you what she said, we will trade. Story for story. You might learn something about why the older races warn their children about crossing paths with humans. The challenge in her voice was unmistakable. My pride demanded I put these presumptuous humans in their place. After all, how impressive could their war stories be? They were barely 2 centuries into space travel, their bodies were ridiculously fragile, and their technology was practically primitive compared to most spacefaring races. Very well, I said, mandibles clicking in anticipation. But don't expect me to be impressed by tales of your little skirmishes and border disputes. Stone's smile reminded me of a predator I'd once faced in the death pits of Zorax Prime. Oh, don't worry, she said. We will start small. Just a little story about the Battle of New Damascus. I had no idea then, but that moment marked the beginning of the most unsettling night of my long, battle-filled life. Amanda Stone swirled her whiskey, the amber liquid catching the purple light of the tavern. Her eyes seemed focused on something far beyond the weathered bar surface. New Damascus, she began, her voice taking on a rhythmic quality that made my antennae vibrate uncomfortably. Ever heard of concrete cracksvor? No? It's this primitive building material we humans use. Mix some rocks and powder, add water, and you have got something that can last centuries. New Damascus had a lot of it. By the time we were done, every single block of it had a story to tell. I shifted on my perch, trying to appear unimpressed. Primitive materials for primitive warriors, I said, but Stone just smiled. The Ravager Corps thought the same thing when they invaded. Their quantum shields and plasma cannons against our concrete and steel. They expected the city to fall in hours. It stood for 9 months. My mandibles clicked involuntarily. 9 months? Against Ravager tech? See, they made the same mistake you are making right now. They thought superior technology meant superior warfare. But humans? We are rats. We are cockroaches. We are every survival-oriented species you have ever encountered, rolled into one package of spite and determination. Hayes nodded silently, while Turner's eyes never left his drink. They'd clearly heard this story before. The Ravagers started with orbital bombardment. Standard procedure, Stone continued. But you know what happens when you bombard concrete buildings? They don't vaporize cleanly like crystal structures. They shatter, crack, collapse into perfect defensive positions. Every broken building became a fortress. Every subway tunnel turned into an ambush point. The rubble they created became our armor. My drink sat forgotten as she spoke. Something about her tone made my battle memories stir uneasily. They deployed their elite shock troops on day 3. Straight down the main thoroughfare, quantum shields at maximum, heavy weapons primed. Beautiful formation, textbook assault. Would have worked great against a conventional army. She paused, taking another sip. We weren't conventional. The first warning they had was when the sewers beneath them exploded. Not with bombs. Mind you, with sewage. Decades of human waste pressurized and superheated. Their shields? Designed to stop energy weapons and kinetic impacts. But liquid seepage. That got through. while they were still processing that lovely surprise. We hit them from 300 different windows with whatever we had. Projectile weapons, mining charges, improvised explosives, even chunks of concrete. My exoskeleton felt too tight suddenly. The tactics she described were undignified, dishonorable, yet undeniably effective. But here's the real beauty of urban combat, especially for humans. It's not just about the fighting, it's about adaptation. When they cut our power, we rigged exercise equipment to generate electricity. When they jammed our communications, we used the city's ancient copper wire network. When they deployed sensor swarms, we caught them with jury-rigged electromagnetic pulse devices made from old microwave ovens. Microwave ovens, I interrupted. You fought an advanced alien army with cooking appliances. Among other things, Stone grinned. My personal favorite was the public transit system. You see, New Damascus had these underground trains running on magnetic levitation. We reprogrammed them into mobile battering rams. Imagine the surprise on a Ravager commander's face when 20 tons of public transportation hits their command post at 200 kilometers per hour. The tavern had grown eerily quiet. Even the Taurians, usually boisterous after combat, were listening intently. But the real turning point, that came from understanding psychology. Ravagers, like many advanced species, rely heavily on their technology. Take that away, make them fight in close quarters, where their fancy weapons are as likely to hit their own troops as the enemy. And something interesting happens. They get nervous, and nervous soldiers make mistakes. She leaned forward, and I found myself leaning back slightly. We didn't win through superior firepower or advanced tactics. We won because we made that city into a nightmare. Every shadow could hide a shooter. Every piece of debris could be a bomb. Every civilian structure could become a weapon. We turned their own technological superiority against them, using their sensor readings to feed them false data, their communication systems to spread misinformation, their own orbital strikes to reshape the battlefield to our advantage. The Ravagers finally withdrew after losing 60% of their invasion force. Not to our weapons, primarily, but to attrition, confusion, and the sheer psychological toll of fighting an enemy that turned everything, literally everything, into a weapon. Stone finished her whiskey in one smooth motion. That's what humans bring to warfare, cracks vor. Not superior strength, not better technology, but the ability to take whatever you throw at us and turn it into a weapon. The determination to keep fighting long past the point where any rational species would surrender, and the creativity to make you fear every shadow, every corner. Every piece of primitive technology you dismissed as harmless. I realized my drink had grown warm, untouched during her story. My combat algorithms were rapidly reassessing everything I thought I knew about warfare. The human's primitive nature wasn't a weakness, it was a source of strength I hadn't considered before. That's just one city, Stone added quietly. One battle. Want to hear what happened when we actually started fighting back in earnest? For the first time in my long military career, I wasn't sure I did. Before I could voice my uncertainty, Jackson Hayes straightened up, his massive frame casting a shadow across the bar. The movement carried none of the fluid grace of his companion Stone. This was pure controlled power. You think that's unsettling, Hayes rumbled, his voice carrying the weight of compressed gravity. Let me tell you about the silent siege of Proxima. About how we won a war without firing a single shot. My mandibles clicked in disbelief. Impossible. War requires combat. Victories are measured in blood and casualties. Hayes shook his head slowly. That's exactly what the Swarm Queen thought. Right up until her entire hive mind collapsed. Several nearby warriors hissed in recognition. Everyone knew about the Proxima incident, the mysterious disappearance of an entire swarm fleet. But no one knew the details. Until now. The swarm approached Proxima with 30,000 ships, Hayes continued, his eyes fixed on something distant. Standard hive mind configuration, linked neural networks, perfect synchronization. Beautiful, really, like watching a dance of stars. He paused, taking a measured sip of his drink. We had exactly 27 ships in orbit. Old ones, practically antiques by your standards. But we also had something else, a complete understanding of human psychology. And more importantly, how it differs from hive mind psychology. Stone was smiling now, a knowing look that made my combat sensors tingle. Turner remained silent, but his attention was focused entirely on his companion's words. See, hive minds operate on consensus, perfect unity, absolute coordination. But humans? We thrive on doubt, on questions, on the countless little contradictions that make up individual consciousness, and we are weaponized that difference. My exoskeleton creaked as I shifted position. Something about his tone made my threat assessment protocols fire randomly. First week, we did nothing. Absolutely nothing. Just sat there in orbit, broadcasting on all frequencies. No messages, no demands. Just white noise, random patterns, meaningless data. The swarm tried to decode it, of course, tried to find the pattern, the logic, the military strategy. There wasn't one. Second week, we started broadcasting human music, but not the whole songs, just fragments, incomplete melodies, unresolved harmonies. Do you know what that does to a hive mind crack score? Trying to complete patterns that were never meant to be completed. I didn't know, but the synthetics at their game table were showing signs of distinct distress. Third week, we introduced human literature. Shakespeare, Kafka, Lovecraft. Stories about isolation, transformation, the breakdown of reality. But we scrambled them, mixed up the narratives, made them contradictory. The swarm's collective consciousness tried to make sense of it all, tried to find the underlying truth. There wasn't one. Hayes leaned forward, his voice dropping lower. Fourth week, we started broadcasting human dreams. Dreams, I interrupted, confusion overwhelming my usual restraint. How do you broadcast dreams? Brainwave patterns from sleeping humans, Hayes explained, a grim smile playing across his face. Pure, unfiltered subconsciousness, random firing neurons, chaos given form. The swarm's hierarchical mind structure tried to categorize it, analyze it, understand it. But human dreams don't follow rules. They don't make sense. They are not supposed to. The tavern had grown so quiet I could hear the hum of the station's life support systems. By week 5, the first cracks appeared. Ships started moving out of formation, slight variations in their usual perfect synchronization. The hive mind was trying to process too many contradictions, too many paradoxes, trying to find patterns in human chaos. Week 6, we introduced art. Not the clean, geometric patterns your species favor. Human art, abstract expressionism, surrealism, images that simultaneously mean everything and nothing. The swarm's collective consciousness began to fragment, trying to reconcile the irreconcilable. My threat assessment protocols were screaming now. This wasn't warfare as I understood it. This was something else entirely. Final week, we broadcast laughter. Just laughter. Thousands of hours of human laughter. Joy, hysteria, sarcasm, fear, all the contradictory emotions we pack into that single sound. The hive mind couldn't handle it, couldn't process how the same action could carry so many opposing meanings. Hayes finished his drink with deliberate slowness. The swarm retreated on day 49. 30,000 ships, millions of drones, one of the most powerful military forces in the galaxy. Defeated not by weapons or tactics, but by their inability to process human irregularity. Their perfect unity shattered by our beautiful chaos. But that's not the best part, he added, his voice taking on an edge that made my combat reflexes fire. The best part is what happened afterward. The fragments of the hive mind that survived. They evolved, developed individual consciousness, started asking questions, started doubting. You didn't just defeat them, I said slowly, comprehension dawning like a supernova. You transformed them. Exactly, Hayes nodded. We didn't just win a battle. We introduced chaos into their order, doubt into their certainty, individuality into their unity. And that spread through their entire species like a virus. They call it the Great Awakening now. We call it psychological warfare. Stone was grinning openly now, while Turner continued his silent observation. Around us, the tavern's patrons showed various signs of distress. The synthetics had completely abandoned their game. Even old Zax 9 had stopped pretending to clean glasses. That's what makes humans dangerous, Hayes concluded. Not our weapons, not our tactics, but our ability to take the fundamental assumptions of any species, even one as ancient and powerful as the swarm, and turn them inside out. We don't just defeat our enemies, we make them question everything they thought they knew about themselves. I found myself doing something I hadn't done in centuries of combat, doubting my own assumptions. If humans could break a hive mind with nothing but noise and nonsense, what else were they capable of? Want to know the real kicker? Hayes added, almost casually. Everything I just told you might be completely true, or might be psychological warfare in action right now. That doubt you are feeling? That uncertainty? That's how we win. My drink remained untouched, my mandibles clicking rapidly in agitation. Before I could formulate a response, Turner finally stirred, his quiet voice carrying unexpected weight. My turn, he said simply. Let me tell you about the last stand at Fort Hope. Looking at his calm expression, I wasn't sure I was ready for another revelation about human warfare, but I was beginning to understand why the older races warned their children about these deceptively simple creatures. Marcus Turner didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. When he spoke, the entire tavern leaned in, drawn by the quiet intensity of his words. Fort Hope wasn't really a fort, he began, running a finger along the rim of his glass. Just a research station on a frozen moon. 300 scientists, 200 support staff, and 50 security personnel. We were studying quantum tunneling effects, nothing military about it, until the Void Hunters found us. My antennae twitched at the mention of that name. Even I, with all my battle experience, avoided Void Hunter territory. For those who don't know. Turner continued, his eyes sweeping the now silent tavern. Void Hunters don't take prisoners, don't negotiate, don't show mercy. They consume everything in their path, leaving nothing but empty space behind. And we had something they wanted, something in our quantum research. You ran, I stated confidently. Any rational species would evacuate when faced with Void Hunters. Turner's smile made my exoskeleton feel 2 sizes too small. No, we stayed, all 550 of us, because behind our station lay the quantum gateway to Earth. If the Hunters took our research, they'd have the key to our homeworld. So we made our stand. 500 civilians against Void Hunters. My voice carried more disbelief than I intended. That's not warfare, that's suicide. Is it? Turner asked softly. Let me tell you what happened. Our first advantage was the moon itself. Temperature minus 200 degrees. Atmosphere so thin it might as well be vacuum. Gravity at 0.3 standard. Conditions that would kill most species. To us, just another Tuesday at the office. He paused, taking a small sip of his whiskey. The Hunters came in full force. 3 warships, each carrying 5,000 troops, against our 50 security officers and a bunch of scientists whose most dangerous weapon was usually a badly made cup of coffee. Stone and Hayes exchanged knowing looks. They knew what was coming. First wave hit our outer perimeter. Standard Hunter tactics, overwhelming force. They expected us to fall back. Instead, Dr. Rebecca Collins, age 63, specialist in quantum mathematics, detonated the hydrogen storage tanks she had rigged to explode, took out 300 Hunters and created a radioactive zone that blocked their primary approach vector. My combat algorithms struggled to process this information. A scientist performing suicide tactics? Second wave came through the service tunnels, met head-on by our cafeteria staff, armed with improvised thermal weapons made from cooking equipment. Ever seen what happens to a Void Hunter's carapace when hit with flash-frozen liquid nitrogen? Our head chef, Paula Martinez, found out. Cost her both arms to frostbite, but she held that tunnel for 6 hours. The tavern had grown so quiet you could hear the station's recycling systems humming. Third wave targeted our communications array. Critical systems couldn't lose it, so Professor James Wilson, quantum mechanics expert, grandmother of 3, plugged herself directly into the power grid, used her own nervous system as a conductor to keep the array running while Hunter energy weapons turned the air around her into plasma. She lasted 20 minutes, long enough for us to get a warning to Earth. My mandibles clicked rapidly, combat protocols firing randomly. This wasn't warfare as I understood it. This was something else entirely. But here's what really broke them, Turner continued, his voice dropping even lower. Every time they breached a section, every time they thought they had won, they found humans waiting. Not soldiers, scientists, engineers, janitors, armed with everything from repurposed lab equipment to improvised explosives. fighting with the desperate creativity that only comes when you have everything to lose and nothing left to fear. He leaned forward, and I found myself instinctively leaning back. Do you know what happens to a void hunter's neural network when exposed to an unshielded quantum field? Neither did we, but Dr. Sarah Chen found out. She turned her life's research into a weapon, exposed herself to lethal levels of quantum radiation to test it. Her last words, recorded in the lab log for Earth. The weight of his words pressed against my armor like deep space pressure. These weren't the actions of warriors. These were the actions of something I had no reference for. Final day. We were down to 86 survivors. No food, no ammunition. Most of our improvised weapons exhausted. The hunters had us cornered in the central lab, and that's when we showed them why humans are the most terrifying species in the galaxy. Turner's eyes met mine, and I saw something in them that made my threat assessment protocols overload. Dr. Adrian Foster had a theory. The quantum gateway we were protecting? With the right modifications, it could be turned into a localized black hole, small enough to fit in the station, but strong enough to tear a hole in reality itself. The calculations would take hours to complete, and the gateway had to be manually controlled until the very last second. You didn't, I whispered, but I knew they had. 78 people volunteered to stay behind. Scientists, maintenance workers, security staff, not because they were ordered to, but because each one calculated the worth of their life against the lives they would save. The remaining 8 escaped with the research data. The hunters, sensing victory, poured everything they had into the station. Turner finished his drink with deliberate slowness. The black hole lasted exactly 23 seconds. Long enough to consume the station, 3 hunter warships and 15,000 of their troops. When it collapsed, it left a quantum anomaly that makes that sector of space permanently unnavigable. The hunters never came near human space again. The official report listed it as a strategic victory, he continued. But that misses the point. The victory wasn't in the body count or the territory secured. It was in what the hunters learned that day. That humans, when cornered, don't simply fight back. We rewrite the rules of reality itself. We turn our own deaths into weapons. We sacrifice everything we are to protect what we believe in. Stone nodded slowly. That's what makes us different from every other species you have fought, Kraxxvor. It's not our technology, or our tactics, or even our determination. It's our willingness to look into the abyss of total annihilation and say you first. The survivors, I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Established the Foster Institute for Quantum Defense, Turner replied. Every year, on the anniversary of Fort Hope, they gather to read the names of the 78. Not as a memorial to the dead, but as a reminder to the living. A reminder that humanity's greatest weapon isn't our ability to take life, but our willingness to give it. Hayes raised his glass. To Fort Hope, he said quietly, to the defenders who proved that the most dangerous creature in the universe isn't the strongest, or the most advanced, or the most advanced, or the most numerous. It's the one that looks at impossible odds and says, this is a good day to die, as long as I take you with me. I looked at my untouched drink, my combat-hardened mind trying to process what I had heard. In all my centuries of warfare, I had never encountered a species that turned their own sacrifice into a weapon, their own deaths into victory conditions. The implications were staggering. That's why the older races fear us, Turner concluded softly. Not because of what we can do to them, but because of what we are willing to do to ourselves. In their eyes, that makes us the most dangerous species in the galaxy. Looking at these 3 humans, hearing their stories, I finally understood. The galaxy didn't shudder at human warfare because of their weapons or tactics. It shuddered because humans had mastered the one form of combat that no other species could comprehend, the absolute commitment to mutual destruction as a valid path to victory. And for the first time in my long career as a warrior, I felt something I had never experienced before: gratitude that humans considered me an ally rather than an enemy. The famous Warriors Tavern had fallen into an unprecedented silence. Even the synthetics, usually immune to emotional displays, showed signs of processing overload. The Taurians had backed away from their table, their massive forms trying to appear smaller. Old Zax 9 had stopped pretending to clean glasses, all 4 of his eyes fixed on the 3 humans. Another round I heard myself say, my voice carrying an unfamiliar tremor. For everyone. Stone raised an eyebrow. Thought we were just soft skins with little skirmishes to brag about. I have fought in 342 battles, I replied, my mandibles clicking thoughtfully. I have faced threats that would freeze the blood of lesser beings. But never, in all my combat experience, have I encountered warriors quite like humans. Hayes nodded appreciatively, while Turner maintained his quiet observation. You see, I continued, addressing the entire tavern now, we all thought we understood warfare. The Taurians with their unbreakable charges, the synthetics with their perfect battle algorithms, my own people with our advanced combat protocols. We thought we had mastered the art of battle. I gestured toward the three humans. But true warfare? It is not about having the strongest armor or the most advanced weapons. It is about the sheer, terrifying commitment to victory at any cost. The willingness to turn everything, even your own destruction, into a weapon. The tavern's patrons shifted uncomfortably. They had all heard stories about humans, but hearing these accounts firsthand had changed something fundamental in our understanding. Your concrete ruins in New Damascus, I nodded to Stone. Your psychological warfare against the swarm, a gesture to Hayes. And Fort Hope, I turned to Turner. These are not just war stories, they are warnings. Warnings, a young synthetic inquired from their corner. Yes, I straightened to my full height, my battle-scarred exoskeleton catching the purple light. Warnings that humans are not bound by the conventional rules of warfare. They do not fight like we do, for glory or territory or resources. They fight with a creativity that borders on madness, with a determination that defies logic, and with a willingness to sacrifice that transforms defeat into victory. Stone smiled, raising her glass. To unconventional warfare, to the dangers of underestimating the soft skins, Hayes added with a grim chuckle. To Fort Hope, Turner said quietly, and something in his tone made everyone in the tavern raise their drinks in solemn respect. I knew, as I stood there in that legendary warriors' gathering place, that this night would become a story of its own. It would spread through the galactic networks, whispered in warrior gatherings across the stars. Not because of the battles described, impressive as they were, but because of what they revealed about humanity's true nature. You know what the scariest part is? I addressed the tavern at large. These three only shared stories of human victories. Imagine what tales they could tell of their defeats, of the lessons they learned, of the strategies they developed from failure. The collective shudder that ran through the gathered warriors was almost palpable. So the next time you hear someone dismiss humans as primitive or technologically inferior, I concluded, my voice carrying the weight of newfound wisdom, remember this night. Remember New Damascus, where they turned ruins into fortresses. Remember the silent siege, where they weaponized chaos itself. Remember Fort Hope, where they proved that defeat is merely an opportunity for the ultimate sacrifice. As the humans prepared to leave, Stone paused beside me. You know, Crax X Vor, there is one thing you got right in your initial assessment. Oh. We are primitives, she grinned. We are savages. We are everything you initially accused us of being. That is precisely what makes us so dangerous. Because when sophisticated, advanced species like yours go to war, you do it with rules and protocols and honor. But us? We fight with the desperate cunning of creatures who have spent their entire evolutionary history as both predator and prey. The three humans moved toward the exit, their departure as casual as their arrival. But the tavern they left behind would never be quite the same. Zax. I called to the bartender, mark this date. This is the night I learned why the galaxy truly fears humans, not because of their strength, but because of their spirit. Not because of what they can do to us, but because of what they are willing to do to themselves. And most importantly, because they can look at beings like me, with all our advanced technology and combat experience, and see not an invincible enemy, but simply another challenge to overcome. As I settled my tab and prepared to leave, I heard the whispers already starting, the story beginning its journey through the cosmos. And I knew that somewhere, on countless worlds across the galaxy, warriors of all species would hear these tales and feel what I felt tonight, a profound gratitude that humans were allies rather than enemies. Because in all my centuries of combat, I had finally understood a fundamental truth: the most dangerous beings in the universe are not those who cannot be killed, but those who do not fear death. And humans? They had mastered the art of turning that fearlessness into their greatest weapon.